We have a great panel for you on the wild world of mobile payments. And I'd like to bring up the panelists, please. Come on up, guys. This is called Shaping the Future of the Mobile Payment. That's a very cosmic question. And we have a superb panel here to address this, this issue. The thing that's really striking about the mobile payment world right now is the mixture of old and new. I mean, we know that the payment system dates back, the technology certainly to the 70s, if not sooner. Now we've seen this kind of Cambrian explosion of startups in the mobile space. And what's really striking about it is that this is how consumers are really accessing fintech. I mean, when we talk about fintech, there's all this B2B infrastructure stuff that goes on that civilians don't understand. But what they all see is the apps popping up on their phone that let them do any number of things with payments and trying to make sense of who's going to win, who's going to lose, how does it all work with the banks. That's what these four panelists are going to help us understand in the time that we have. I am going to kick it over to them. Mike, why don't we start with you to introduce yourself, and then we'll just move this way and take it from there.
Mike Lavin, the CEO of the Currency Cloud, API-accessed cross-border payments. A very large percentage of the payments that come in our system are generated on our customers' mobile apps.
Céline, I'm the founder and CEO of MangoPay. MangoPay is a payment API dedicated to crowdfunding platform, collaborative consumption platform, and marketplaces.
I'm James Algrove, head of growth at Stripe, and we are a global payments platform. It's a set of APIs that allow payments to be integrated into whatever developers are building. That could be a mobile app, it could be a website, it could be something else.
Alain Falis, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Yoyo Wallet. We are a mobile wallet that comprises payment, loyalty, personalized reward, and marketing in one single app, and we're live in the UK in about 700 outlets, and we're doing 80,000. We have 80,000 people and 400,000 transactions a month.
Excellent. Celine, could we begin with you? MangoPay is a white label operation that helps process payments for a very defined niche, crowdfunding. Tell us two things, if you could, share with us. First, how did you decide that MangoPay should focus on the crowdfunding space? And second, share with us a technological problem that MangoPay solved to provide service to those clients.
So in fact, we believe crowdfunding, collaborative consumption, and marketplaces have a dedicated need in terms of payments because what we are doing for them is payment for third party. So we offer an e-wallet solution in white label. So, for example, one of the many problems we solve is about reinvesting the cash. So, for example, on a marketplace with the e-wallet for a seller, if receive the payments, then he can decide to withdraw the cash, or he can decide either to reinvest the cash on the marketplace. So for mobile payment, for example, it's really an awesome feature because then there is not even credit card details to enter. You just use your cash you already have on the platform. And more than 30% of the payments are done through this way.
I see. That's excellent. Mike, you work in the cross-border finance space. This is, by the way, folks, this is a $21 trillion system. It's like the mother of all financial systems.
We're not 21 trillion.
But you're playing in a big market, let's say that. Currency Cloud, tell us about how you deal with the banks and then also deal on the other end with your clients. I mean, you're operating in that ecosystem. Help us understand the relationship building that you do and the challenges that you have to overcome with that.
Sure. So we deal with the banks carefully.
Carefully, huh?
Carefully, yes. Listen, the cross-border system between countries right now, the rails on which money moves from place to place, is the SWIFT network and the banking network. So anything the Currency Cloud transfers, the instruction may come from somebody's mobile, but it's moving from a bank account, let's just say in the UK, to a bank account in India or a bank account in Singapore or a bank account in France. So we need to be totally integrated in a whole series of different ways with banks. You know, we work with banks as partners. We work with banks as competitors. we work with banks as suppliers, so we have a multi-level relationship with the banks, and we have to, each time I'm talking to Barclays or UniCredit or Scandinavian Bank or a bank in India, I have to be very conscious that I have multiple levels of relationship with them and manage it all the time. In general, I think the banks that we deal with look at us as a mechanism by which they access markets and customers that they otherwise couldn't service.
Very interesting. One of the other themes that I think all of us hear a lot in our travels through fintech land is leveraging the data, like figuring out how one particular app or function is a platform that can also deliver all of these other services. And Alan, I think that Yoyo Wallet is really a good example of how this is working. I mean, you started as a payments app, you're in colleges, you're reaching this very defined market set, but now you're adding other services on top of the payment platform?
We actually use the payment effectively as an enabler of a very different type of transaction at the point of sale. So imagine you pay with Yoyo, you receive immediately in your app a digital stamp, or you receive points or a voucher or things you've earned from actually being a good customer in that particular retailer, and all that is actually customized per retailer in the same app. So effectively the payment is a trigger to a transaction whereby we extract all the basket data at the time of the transaction. And that data is effectively what you bought. If you bought a Coke Zero as opposed to Coke Light, or double espresso as opposed to cappuccino, these are actually data sets that we get. And so what can you do with the data? You either spam people with it, it's obviously not what we do, or you create a very type of interaction between the consumer and the retailer, whereby you create very targeted reward programs, very targeted offers and campaigns, and this is effectively the new generation of commerce, which is opened up by this possibility.
And James, I mean, you're doing something similar, right? I mean, you've got a platform, you're going to use it to leverage other services and products to your customers, but you're in a white label situation, right?
Yeah, so I guess Stripe kind of bridges all of the business models here, and that it's a platform that people can build on top of. And so we do a similar thing to Currency Cloud in the sense that we like to abstract away a lot of that complexity that otherwise exists in the financial ecosystem, right? So to get up and running as a merchant on Stripe is very, very simple and straightforward. Fill in a 5-minute form and you can go live straight away. And really that's a very, very radical departure from the past, which is where you have to go to a bank, get your own merchant account, then find a gateway that it plugs into, and there's a lot of complexity there. And then likewise that extends to other things, whether you're scaling internationally, you can do that instantly, and we can deposit your funds in a range of different currencies, whether that's selling in new channels. You know, if you want to go build a mobile app, you can incorporate Apple Pay very, very simply, just a couple of lines of code. And so really our platform is to get rid of a lot of that complexity that otherwise exists in the industry.
We're gonna throw it open to the floor for some questions, but first I just wanted to ask the open API question, because again, this is another big one that we hear with. In fact, my understanding now is that by 2018, there's going to be some big regulatory changes in Europe that are going to basically direct, force banks to make available their API to any number of third-party platforms that want to put an app on your phone. And I mean, could that potentially really change the landscape, change the market for your industry, for mobile payments? I mean, anyone jump in who wants to take it away?
For us, it would create another option for the consumer. So card is obviously the preferred option for most of us. So when you open an app like Uber or on Yoyo, whichever app, we put our card details. It's like, you know, a reflex that we have. I think from 2018 onwards, I think it's going to take more than a couple of years, by the way, we'll be able to access our bank account directly and have a kind of a straight-through payment through the bank account. So I think that's interesting, obviously, because if the app adapt to this particular new funding source by creating an experience which is as good as putting card numbers on an app, then it's going to work. If it's more friction involved, then it's not going to work.
So listen, when that's PSD2, yes. And if startups and everyone else can access consumer account information, that opens up a whole range of services where you're not having to reconcile against your bank account. For us, we're a business-to-business payments company, so its impact on us will be its impact on our customers, but I think you can see then a whole other level of whether it's investment or loyalty or payment firms that now don't have to reconcile a bank account, it's up to date. It makes a big difference.
So, for example, MangoPay offer a large range of means of payments, including payments by withdrawal that is very useful for crowdfunding platforms. So we do it, for example, for Syndicate Room. And by 2018, thanks to the PSD2, we will be able to process the withdrawal on behalf of the end user. This is awesome.
And from the Stripe point of view, I'd say we're an API company at the very core, and so anything we can do to put more APIs into the industry, standardize things more, the more innovation that we can unlock. And so we're very excited from that point of view. There's a lot of cool things, as you mentioned, that are unlocked by this. I would say that the success of it is going to be very much based on how quickly it gets implemented. I agree, I think it's going to be 2018 necessarily. It's a lot of these systems that the banks are working with are very, very clunky and old. And then also like the degree to which it's standardized is going to be really important. If every bank develops their own API, then that's just going to take longer for everyone to integrate into and increase switching costs and things like that. So very exciting in theory, but the implementation in practice is what's really important.
Do I have any questions from the floor for our panel? Right down here in the second row. You can use this, or you can project. That's very good. Yeah. Let me just repeat the question so everybody can hear it. The gentleman asked the trust question. With an open API, how do you encourage consumers to take that leap and entrust payments to new entrants? Do I have that pretty well right? Okay.
I would say a lot of tech companies that are not in financial technology have kind of paved the way here. So in the same way that you can connect your Facebook account or your Google account to something and provide a certain set of permissions, that's something that consumers are more and more comfortable with. And I think again, it comes down to the details of the implementation, but provided that kind of step is in there, then I would say that consumers are going to be quite accepting. Obviously, if you just give away all of your bank account information irrevocably, then that's going to be more of a problem. But I think again, if it's built in the right way, it could be a really powerful tool.
I would think too that there'd be an enlightened approach by some banks that they recognize that, I mean, for all of the reputational damage that the banks incurred in 2008, they still are trusted with processing your paychecks and bills, et cetera. That partnership, they could leverage the trust that they have on the high street. I would think that would be a plan that they'd want to pursue. If we had a banker here, we would ask them that. But do we have any other questions from the floor? Otherwise, I can just keep carrying on. Let's talk a little bit more about the cross-border issue, because one of the things that I know is a hang-up in the system is basically making that payment from the US to the UK or to France or cross borders. You still have to get that regulatory piece, even if you're using something as radical and as kind of making an end run as Bitcoin or a cryptocurrency as the rails for a payment. Is that going to get easier, Mike? Is that cross-border piece?
Well, I'm sure everybody here reads the papers and saw the Panama disclosures.
Yeah, the Panama Papers.
Yeah, Panama Papers. And when you sit in my office and think about it, you can think that compliance will only get sterner and sterner. I think the necessity to identify people in a cross-border payment end-to-end for every transaction will not be relaxed and will not go away. I think you just have to plan that that's the way the world works. It won't change, that anything that we see when we pick up the paper daily makes that look more and more intense. So when we look at the world, our issue is how do we make that easier for our customers? So, because remember, compliance in some ways is a data issue. You need to make sure that you're collecting the right data on each end for each customer and make it easy for them to put it in, then you can evaluate it. So it's not going to get easier, it's only going to get tougher.
Yeah, I think about the remittance economy, which is now bigger than in aggregate than foreign aid. and you think about how Bitcoin, how a number of very innovative mobile payment apps, I mean, M-Pesa is always thrown out, are operating in the developing world and especially in like post-conflict nations. And I wonder if the Panama Papers changes the climate and makes it perhaps more difficult for these remittance. I mean, we see like the remittance companies working with outfits like yours to try and use technology to really help the unbanked, right? I mean, what's the impact on financial inclusion?
So just let me quickly and then turn it over. We saw in the UK in the last couple of years the whole issue with payments to Somalia, which then ended up in closing down huge amounts of the remittance channels. And the net was it forced payments that were above ground, underground. Largely complex issue. The financial inclusion, mobile payments, mobile channels, mobile top-up, there's a whole series of ways that remittances are starting to move money around the world a lot more easily. And I think this is one of the things where the industry just has to fight. You know, it's incumbent on the industry sort of to represent our customers so that that doesn't all get closed down, that the 99.9999% of things that need to get done get done. It's an industry issue.
I would say the other thing on the international angle is it's also increasingly important for businesses to be able to access new markets quickly, especially in a market like the UK, which is relatively smaller domestically than the US, for example. You know, being able to access those new markets very quickly is very important in order to scale businesses. I guess one example from my work is work a lot with Deliveroo on their payments, and the founder called me up saying I want to launch in France and Spain and Ireland, and I don't know, hit a long list of countries. And the fact that platforms like Stripe now exist that allow you to do that without really changing anything and just go live in new countries is a real driver of a lot of innovation and growth that previously would have required you to go into that market physically, open a bank account, open a legal entity, open all these things, and that today that's just not as required because of some of this innovation we have. So I think it's important on a business side as well as individuals.
And maybe if I had to add a joke on this topic, I would say that I'm sure our fourth company are way more regulated than banks.
What about Brexit? Brexit impact on your businesses? I mean, if that happens, what does that mean for your businesses?
For my point of view, the only impact that I can see from a business perspective is on regulation. So the FCA here have been pretty good, actually, in creating the environment whereby companies like us can actually thrive, and passport actually the required regulation around e-money to the rest of Europe. I think the Brexit would create effectively a real problem here because the onus is on the FCA to regulate whoever has passported their business to Italy or Spain or wherever else. So I don't think that the Italian central bank or the Spanish central bank would be particularly pleased of having the FCA outside the EU. So I think it would have an impact on that.
Anyone else have opinions on Brexit? Or?
I can always speak. I think Brexit would impact us, and anything that threatens one of three things would hurt the company. One, as Alan said, the harmonization of regulation. The second thing is the free flow of technical talent. Our business is built on people from all over Europe coming together in London because it's an attractive place to be. Anything that hurts that. And thirdly, anything that hurts the position of the UK as a major financial capital. Anything that caused any wobbliness in either of those three things wouldn't be good for us.
Excellent. Okay, I'll throw it to the floor one more time if anybody has a last question. Otherwise, I think I would like to thank the panelists, Mike, Celine, Alan, and James. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, and best of luck.